The immortal John Hancock here, and today I'm talking about things that are affecting the retro collecting market and just retro collecting in general. And I think it's important to differentiate between retro collecting and retro gaming, because retro gaming really this is not what I'm talking about. So you know, I've gotten asked many times over the years. You know, I've been collecting a long time, you know, going past 25 years now, and there are many things that are affecting retro collecting today. And so I get asked all the time on my channel, what are your thoughts on the market today? Where do you think it's headed? You know, I'm not great at predicting the future, or I'd be making a lot more money. But there are several things that are affecting the market today, which are what is going to affect things moving forward. And so it's just things to consider. Whether you're on the side wanting to retro collect, you're interested in retro collecting, or you know, whether you're a collector or a reseller, these are some important things to consider. And so the first and foremost thing that's always discussed is the prices. Now, the prices I've seen skyrocket dramatically even in the last 5 years. Now, prices have gone up and down, but as Nintendo has aged, many people that grew up with Nintendo and its continued popularity of its classic franchises has really driven this market. I mean, I've seen especially Nintendo products quadruple in value over a short amount of time. Whether or not that stays is yet to be determined. You know, I remember early days of eBay in which, you know, Atari 2600s were sold for lots of money. You know, and you know, that market has died down, but still, you know, rare games and sought after games are going to continue to be valuable and sought after. So prices in general, prices do affect what someone buys. You know, prices has definitely affect what I purchase now. You know, I'm very, very close to a Super Nintendo set, but one of the games I'm missing is hundreds of dollars, and I just, you know, to me I'm collecting it, I'm not playing it per se. It's for a collection, so that does affect my purchasing. And so prices affect everybody. High prices aren't great for retro game store owners either, which I value and respect. You know, I'm close friends with a retro game store owner, and the high prices affect people buying things. They buy less, or they buy different things, and it's hard when you have something popular, but you know, the market value is this, and yet people aren't buying it, and so that does affect things. The next thing that affects retro collecting is scarcity and supply, and it is kind of lose-lose for everybody. Again, whether you're collecting it, you're in your business relies on it. Low supply stinks. It stinks. You know, I know several friends that are looking for particular games, and you know, they try to buy it in person, and it's just hard. There's just so many copies of these games, you know, out there, especially for the original version of something, and you can't find them, and it's hard. And then when you find them, there again, the price is super expensive. So supply does affect games, and it affects the market. And I definitely seen collectors, because they can't find something, they've just moved on. Like, oh, okay, well, I've looked for this for X amount of time, I'm just going to move on and get something else, or combined with the price. The third thing that's important to know is that there's a balance. There's a relationship between a collector and a reseller, or someone who makes their living selling retro video games, and that's constant flow, and an imbalance with that affects the market. If there's too many collectors out there collecting something, and there's not enough resellers, that affects the market. If there's too many resellers trying to sell their wares, but there's not enough people buying them, that affects the market. And that, you know, that's a constant tug of war going on in retro collecting. And I've seen it kind of ebb and flow. I think part of the problem is people that have been in it for a while get burnt out. Whether you're collecting or reselling, it's hard. I think as a collector, I've seen the prices get so ridiculous that you know, I never was in it for an investment. I think that's first of all, I need to say that. You know, my number one goal still is to get a majority of my collection to be displayed on a museum, etc. That's still my plan. But, you know, for people that are collecting for different reasons, it's tough. It takes space, takes time, costs money. All those things are short in supply in people's lives. I think that it's important to know that you know, current market trends don't stay the same, and so is retro gaming going to be hot forever? No, I don't think so. I think that on the collecting side, it's going to be here, and then I think down the road it's just going to look a lot differently, and which then gets to my next thing, is that there's modern alternatives for collecting retro. And, you know, let's talk about the NES Mini. You know, the NES Mini, I think, is going to be a huge hit, and I think it's going to scratch the itch for people that want a retro game but don't want to retro collect, but don't want to play just on an emulator. They want to play something nostalgic. It's kind of cute, fun. Hey, I can play this with my kids. You know, the NES Mini is I think going to be huge. And then the thing is too, I think there's always going to be retro collectors that have a collection of games. Something new comes out. They look at their collection. They look at the current value of it. Decide, you know what? Maybe this is time to cash in. They sell their collection, and they go with a more modern alternative, which, you know, the NES Mini could be an alternative for some collectors out there that just want to, you know, play their games and kind of stop collecting and move on. It's not for everybody. You know, the other thing too would be like, you know, a Raspberry Pi. You know, Raspberry Pi is a good example of, you know, how you can emulate old consoles for fairly inexpensive price, and, you know, you can play all the old games, but it doesn't cost much. You know, there's always emulation, but, you know, again, these are all modern alternatives to you know, collecting old games, which can cost lots of money. There's other alternatives out there. There's always compilation discs for new consoles. I know that there's Flashback Classics, which is for PS4 and Xbox One, which is a bunch of Atari games. I want to say I wish Nintendo would do this, but, you know, if they did that, they would possibly sell less games. But, you know, maybe the NES Mini is kind of their answer to that. We'll see. But definitely modern alternatives have always been around. Well, not always been around. I think they've been more current than the last 5-10 years. Atari Flashback consoles is a good example. You know, the thing with those, though, is that, you know, it's cheaper. That's the irony, is that it's almost cheaper to get a real Atari and real cartridges than get an Atari Flashback that has limited appeal. But that's a separate conversation. I think that there are market trends going on right now. I think that the money that's been generated in the retro collecting scene has gotten the attention of larger companies. This has been a trend for a while. I think products such as the NES Mini are going to generate some attention, and really looking at what are people willing to buy, and how can companies, you know, capture that audience. It'll be interesting. You know, I actually wish there was more options to retro game and have some more modern alternatives to play things. Play my old cartridges. You know, for a good example, I'm still waiting for a cost-appropriate Atari 2600 with some modern hookup options. And I know there's some options out there, but they're not cost-effective. And so I look forward to seeing that in the future, definitely. Digital options. You know, retro collecting's great, but like I talked earlier, it takes up space. It takes considerable amount of space. You know, I have a garage full of stuff, and I'm out of space. This is something that moving forward, I'm going to determine, especially when I'm making a game room expansion to actually play my stuff. Looking at, do I need really all this stuff that's out there? And last and definitely not least, the backlogs of collectors. This really has gotten my attention recently. Calculating that essentially I could never buy another game in my life, and I would have enough games to last more than a lifetime if I wanted to sit down and play everything. I get this comment a lot. Do you play your games? And I think people need to understand that, like, gaming is separate than collecting, and that they're two separate things. And gamers, you know, hardcore gamers, do exactly that. They game. They don't get the collecting aspect of it, and they have judgment and opinions of it, and that's fine. Collectors are a different breed. Collectors collect all sorts of stuff. For collectors, it's more about the physical media. Which some, especially with retro collecting, there's the nice option that you can also play the item that you're collecting, and that's why I'm attracted to it, because I'm attracted to both the collecting aspect, the historical aspect, and the physical aesthetics of something. You know, I love collecting the weird, the bizarre, and there's just nothing like it. But you get these pools of collectors and gamers that don't understand one another, and you know, it is what it is, and I'm not expecting any hardcore straight only gamer to understand why I have the collection I have, and how dare I don't collect play it all and stuff, and it's just silly. But I don't expect certain people to understand, nor should they. It's not their collection. And so that's it. I mean, really, it's just, what do you think are the retro collecting trends that are affecting you? I talked about some of the major ones. Again, I'm keeping these videos pretty basic. Right now, I'm knee deep in grading papers and grades for my class. I've been pretty exhausted, but I'm just continuing to do videos, and I was just thinking about this as being an interesting topic to talk about. Again, you can follow me on my Facebook page, The Immortal John Hancock. Thank you for all the likes and subscribes. It helps me out. I also have a humble Patreon, and every month I do an exclusive video and I upload it. I hopefully plan on doing a pretty cool one for November. Thank you again for everything. This is the Immortal John Hancock. I'll see you next week, and I'll be announcing the winner to my Game Panic 2 contest, and that will be on Sunday. Thank you so much. Take care.